What do you think you're doing? Sitting at the table without permission. My daughter-in-law Vanessa's shriek cut through the apartment walls like a whip. I saw my plate fly through the air and shatter against the kitchen floor. The soup splattered everywhere, staining my shoes, the hem of my grey dress. My son, Daniel, started clapping like he was at a show. "Nice one, babe," he said. "The old woman needs to learn her place." His words hit me harder than any hand. I felt something inside me shatter, like a piece of glass that had endured pressure for years until it finally broke. But they didn't know one detail that would change everything. A secret I had kept in silence, waiting for the right moment. And that moment had just arrived. Before we continue, please subscribe to the Granny's Voice channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are watching from now and what time it is there. We might give you a shout out in our next video. Today's shout out goes to Nina Marks from Virginia. Thank you for being part of this great family. Now, let me tell you what happened that day, because this story isn't just mine. It belongs to all the mothers who have been judged, despised, and forgotten by the children they raised. My name is Margaret. I am 67 years old. And if you saw me on the street, you probably wouldn't notice me. I'm one of those women who go unseen. Grey hair pulled back in a simple bun, modest clothes, no flashy jewelry. For 43 years, I was Robert's wife. 43 years of picking his clothes up off the floor, of making his coffee exactly how he liked it, of waiting up for him when he came home late. I'm not complaining. That's just how things were in my generation. You didn't question. You just did what you had to do. Robert wasn't a bad man. He wasn't particularly good either. He was an ordinary man, the kind who comes home tired from work, sits in front of the television, and expects dinner to be ready. We had one son, Daniel, my only child, the boy for whom I gave up my dreams, my job as a secretary, my entire life. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought being a mother meant giving up everything. My life was small, but it was mine. We lived in a modest house in the suburbs. Nothing fancy, but it had a backyard where I grew tomatoes and herbs. I liked to sit there at dusk when the sun painted everything orange and the air smelled like damp earth. I read old novels I bought at thrift stores, drinking chamomile tea from a chipped mug that had belonged to my mother. They were moments of silence, of peace. No one asked me for anything. No one expected anything from me. I simply existed, and that was enough. Daniel got married 3 years ago. He met Vanessa at his job. And from the first moment, I knew that woman didn't want me around. I saw it in her eyes during the wedding. A cold, calculating look. But I kept quiet. I always kept quiet. It's what I had done my entire life. I thought that with time things would get better, that we'd find a way to get along. I was wrong. After the wedding, the visits to my house became more and more scarce. Daniel always had an excuse. "We're busy, Mom. Vanessa isn't feeling well. We have plans." I would nod, smile, say I understood. But the nights grew longer, the silence in the house heavier. I would prepare food for 2 and end up eating alone, saving the rest in the refrigerator in the hope that my son would come to visit. He never came. Then Robert died. It was sudden. A heart attack in his sleep. I woke up one morning and he was gone. Just like that, without warning, without goodbyes. Suddenly, I found myself completely alone in that house, which all at once seemed too big, too empty. The first few days were the worst. I walked through the rooms, expecting to hear his voice, the sound of his footsteps. But there was nothing, only silence, a silence that ached in my bones. Daniel came to the funeral. He stayed with me for exactly 2 hours. Vanessa didn't even get out of the car. She said she had a migraine. After that, weeks went by without me hearing from him. I called several times, left messages. Nothing. It was as if my son had disappeared along with his father. One night, sitting in the kitchen with a cup of cold tea in my hands, I realized something terrible. I was completely alone in the world. I had no siblings. My parents had died decades ago. My childhood friends had scattered over the years. I only had Daniel, and Daniel didn't want me. That truth hit me like a fist in the stomach. It hurt so much I had to grab the edge of the table to keep from falling. I cried that night. I cried like I hadn't cried in years. I cried for Robert, for my loneliness, for the lost years. But most of all, I cried for my son, for the boy I had held in my arms, whom I had cared for when he had a fever, whom I had hugged when he had nightmares. That boy didn't exist anymore. In his place was a man who saw me as a burden, as something to be gotten rid of. It was then that I made the decision that would change everything. I thought that if I had something valuable to offer, maybe my son would want me again. Maybe he would see me, listen to me, let me be a part of his life. The house I lived in was mine. Robert had left it to me in the will. It was worth around $500,000. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough. I called Daniel and proposed a plan. I would sell my house, and with that money, we would buy a bigger apartment where we could live together as a family. He and Vanessa would have their space, and I would have mine. It would be perfect. For the first time in months, my son seemed excited. "You'd really do that, Mom?" His voice sounded different, almost affectionate. "Of course, son. I'd do anything for you, and I meant it. I would have given my life for him without a second thought." The process of selling my house was more painful than I imagined. Every room held memories. The kitchen where I had prepared thousands of meals. The bedroom where I had slept next to Robert for more than 4 decades. The small backyard where I had watched my plants grow season after season. I had to pack up an entire life into boxes. Old clothes, yellowed photographs, letters Robert had written me when we were young. Every object was a piece of my history. But I convinced myself I was doing the right thing. I was building a future with my son. That's what mattered. That was the only thing that mattered. The house sold in 2 months. I received $498,000. I looked at that check and felt dizzy. It was everything I had. Everything I had left from a lifetime of work and sacrifice. I called Daniel excited. "It's done, son. We have the money." He arrived that same afternoon with Vanessa. It was the first time she had ever set foot in my house. She walked through the rooms with an expression of disdain, touching things as if they were garbage. "What an outdated place," she said, looking at the cream-colored curtains I had sewn myself. "It smells like old people." I swallowed hard. I smiled. I said nothing. Daniel hugged me. "Thanks, Mom. This means a lot to us." But his eyes weren't looking at me. They were looking at the check I held in my hands. We went to look for apartments together. Vanessa chose. Daniel nodded. I kept quiet. That's how our new dynamic worked. We visited at least 15 different places. All of them were too expensive, too small, or Vanessa didn't like them. "I need space," she'd say. "I can't live in a cramped place. I'll suffocate." Finally, we found an apartment in a modern building. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a large kitchen with new appliances, an integrated living and dining room. The windows overlooked the city. It cost $485,000. It was almost all my money. "It's perfect," Vanessa said with a smile. It was the first time I had seen her smile. Daniel looked at me. "What do you say, Mom?" I looked at the apartment. It was nice. I couldn't deny that. Bright, clean, new. "If you too like it, I like it, too," I replied. And just like that, I sealed my fate. We went to the attorney's office to sign the papers. The attorney was an older man named Thomas Green with thick glasses and a tired voice. He read all the documents out loud. I was nervous. I had never done something like this alone. It had always been Robert who took care of these things. "Mrs. Margaret, this apartment will be registered in the name of Vanessa." Cut him off. In my name and my husband's name. Of course. I froze. The attorney looked at me. "Are you in agreement with this, Is it your money that is paying for the property?" Daniel took my hand. "Mom, it's just a technicality. We're family. It doesn't matter whose name is on it, right?" I wrung my hands. I felt a lump in my throat. Something inside me was screaming that this was wrong. But I looked into my son's eyes and saw the boy he had been. The boy who needed me. "It doesn't matter," I whispered. "Put their names on it." The attorney frowned. I strongly advise you to reconsider this decision. If the apartment is not in your name, you will have no legal right to the property. Vanessa let out a dry laugh. Are you implying that we would do something bad to my husband's mother? How disrespectful. Daniel stood up. I think we should find another attorney. Someone who won't insult my family. Thomas held up his hands. I'm not insulting anyone. I'm just doing my job, protecting my client's interests. I felt trapped between two fires. I didn't want problems. I didn't want my son to be angry with me. It's fine, I said in a trembling voice. I'll sign whatever they say, the attorney sighed. As you wish, But first, I need you to sign this additional document. It's an acknowledgement that you are donating the money voluntarily and that you understand you will have no claim to the property. I signed. My hand was shaking so much the signature came out illegible. But I signed. I handed over the check. I watched as the attorney processed everything. When we finished, Vanessa had a huge smile on her face. Daniel kissed my forehead. You're the best mom in the world. His words should have made me happy. But I felt empty. As if I had just given away more than money, as if I had just given away my dignity, my future, my security. We left the attorney's office in silence. Vanessa walked ahead, reviewing the papers with satisfaction. Daniel walked beside me. It's all going to be okay, Mom. You'll see. We'll be a happy family. I nodded. I wanted to believe him. I clung to that promise like a shipwreck survivor clings to a piece of wood in the middle of the ocean. But the attorney, Thomas, stopped me at the door. He waited for Vanessa and Daniel to leave. Mrs. Margaret, he said in a low voice, here's my card. If you ever need help, call me. What you just did is very dangerous. You've left yourself with nothing. I took the card. I put it in my purse. Thank you, but it won't be necessary. I trust my son. Thomas shook his head. I hope so, I hope so. I left the office with a weight on my chest, a dark premonition I couldn't explain, but I ignored it. I got in the car with Daniel and Vanessa. They were laughing, making plans, talking about the future. I stared out the window, watching the city pass by, wondering if I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. The move was quick. I didn't have much to bring. A few boxes of clothes, my books, my mother's chipped mug, old photographs. Everything fit in the trunk of Daniel's car. Vanessa and he, on the other hand, arrived with a moving truck full of new furniture, beige leather sofas, a huge dark wood dining table, a giant television, modern lamps, abstract paintings that I didn't understand, but that, according to Vanessa, were contemporary art. I watched them unload everything and felt like I was entering someone else's house, not my home. Where do you want me to put your things, Mom? Daniel asked, pointing to my boxes. Wherever there's space, son. He took them to the smallest room at the end of the hall, a windowless room that faced the building's ventilation shaft. I could hear the constant hum of the pipes. I unpacked my things in silence. I hung my clothes in the small closet. I placed my books on a shelf. I put Robert's photograph on the nightstand. I looked around. The walls were white, cold, empty. There was nothing personal, nothing that said this was my space. I sat on the bed and took a deep breath. It's temporary, I told myself. Just until we all get used to it. But something in my chest tightened, an anxiety I couldn't name. I left the room and walked through the apartment. Vanessa was organizing the kitchen, placing plates, glasses, pots, everything new, everything shiny. Need any help? I asked. She didn't even turn to look at me. No, I've got it under control. Her voice was sharp, dry. I stood in the kitchen doorway, not knowing what to do. Daniel was in the living room connecting the television. Son, do you want me to make something to eat? He shook his head without looking at me. Vanessa already ordered food. It's on its way. They hadn't asked me if I was hungry. They hadn't included me in the decision, but I smiled. Oh, good. That way, I can rest a bit. The first few days were strange. I tried to find my place in that apartment, but it was as if I didn't exist. I got up early as I always had. I made coffee, toast, But Vanessa would come into the kitchen and sigh with annoyance. I already told you I make breakfast. I don't like people touching my things. I backed away. Sorry, I just wanted to help. She took the coffee pot and poured my coffee down the sink. This coffee is horrible. I don't know how you make it so bad. I felt my cheeks burn. For 43 years, I had made coffee the same way. No one had ever complained, but I kept quiet. I went back to my room. I sat on the bed and listened to Vanessa make breakfast. I heard her laughing with Daniel. I heard them eating together, chatting, planning their day. I wasn't invited to that conversation. I was a ghost in my own home. Well, in their home because that apartment was never mine, was it? I tried to establish a routine. I went for walks in the morning. I'd buy bread, milk, some fruit. But when I returned, Vanessa would intercept me at the door. Why did you buy this? We already have bread. You're wasting money. I looked at the bag in my hands. It was my money. The little I had left after paying for the apartment, but I said nothing. You're right. Sorry. She took the bags. I'll handle the shopping. You don't know what we need. I nodded. I backed away. I locked myself in my room. That's how the days passed. I tried to be useful, to not be in the way, to make myself small, but it was never enough. I never did anything right. If I washed the dishes, I did it wrong. If I mopped the floor, I left spots. If I folded the laundry, I didn't fold it the way Vanessa liked. Better if you just do nothing, she told me one afternoon. You only make things complicated. Meals were the worst. At first, Vanessa would serve me a plate and leave it on the kitchen counter. They ate in the dining room. I ate alone, standing, facing the kitchen window. I chewed in silence, listening to their conversations in the other room. They talked about work, about friends, about plans for the weekend. They never asked me how my day was. They never included me. It was like I was invisible. One night, I tried to sit with them. I had made a stew, one that Daniel used to love when he was a kid. I thought maybe that would break the ice. I put the pot in the center of the table. I sat down. Vanessa walked into the dining room and stopped short. What are you doing? Her voice was sharp as a knife. I thought we could have dinner together. I answered in a small voice. She laughed. A dry, humorless laugh. Together. Since when do you eat with us? I looked at Daniel for support. He was staring at his plate. He said nothing. Vanessa came closer. Your place is in the kitchen. Not here. I got up trembling. I took my plate. I went back to the kitchen. I heard her sit down. I heard her serve the food. I heard Daniel say, "Thanks, babe." As if she had made the stew. As if I didn't exist. The weeks passed and things got worse. Vanessa started making rules. I couldn't use the main bathroom, only the small one next to my room. I couldn't watch television in the living room because I made noise. I couldn't open the windows because dust got in. I couldn't invite anyone over because it was her house and she decided who came in. Every rule was another chain. Every prohibition was another piece of my dignity chipped away. I tried to talk to Daniel. One afternoon, I found him alone in the living room. "Son, I need to talk to you." He didn't look up from his phone. "What's up, Mom?" I sat next to him. "I feel uncomfortable here. Vanessa, she doesn't treat me well." He sighed. "Mom, Vanessa is stressed. She has a lot of work. Don't take it personally." I felt something break inside me. "Don't take it personally, Daniel. She treats me like I'm an intruder." He finally looked at me, but his eyes were cold. "Maybe if you helped out more around the house, if you weren't in the way so much, things would be different." His words hit me like stones. "In the way, son, I paid for this apartment. He stood up and we gave you a roof over your head. Isn't that enough?" He left the living room, leaving me alone with my words stuck in my throat. That night, I cried in my room. I cried in silence with the pillow over my mouth so they wouldn't hear me. I felt trapped. I had nowhere to go. I didn't have enough money to rent another place. I had spent everything on this apartment that now rejected me. I was out of options. No way out. I thought about the attorney Thomas's card tucked in my purse. I thought about calling him, but for what? What could he do? The papers were signed. The apartment wasn't mine. I had given away my future, thinking I was buying love. How could I have been so stupid, so naive, so blind? I looked at myself in the small mirror in the room. I saw an old, tired, broken woman. A woman who had spent her whole life being invisible and who would stay invisible until the day she died. That's what I believed. But I didn't know yet that there was something else inside me, something that was asleep, something that would soon awaken. 2 months had passed since we moved into the apartment. 2 months that felt like 2 years. Every day was a new humiliation. A new way to make me feel like I was a burden. Vanessa had perfected the art of hurting me without raising her voice. Little comments, looks of contempt, silences loaded with hatred. You left hair in the sink again. Why do you walk so heavily? It sounds like you have rocks in your shoes. Are you going to eat all of that? At your age, you should be more careful. Every sentence was a drop of poison, and I absorbed them all, one after another, until I felt like I was drowning. I stopped leaving my room more than necessary. I would wake up, go to the bathroom, come back. I would wait for them to leave to go to the kitchen. I'd eat quickly, wash my plate, and lock myself away again. My world had shrunk to 4 white walls and an uncomfortable bed. I read the same books over and over because I didn't have money to buy new ones. I'd look out the small window that faced the ventilation shaft and see only darkness. Sometimes I wondered if this is what prisoners felt like. Trapped, hopeless, counting the days without knowing why. I was becoming a shadow, a ghost haunting that apartment. Unseen, unheard, unimportant to anyone. One morning, I dared to use the washing machine. I had dirty clothes piled up for weeks. I waited for Vanessa to leave for work. I went down with my basket and put the clothes in the machine. It was halfway through the cycle when I heard the apartment door open. Vanessa was back. I heard her heels clicking on the floor. She was getting closer. My heart was pounding. She appeared in the laundry room doorway, arms crossed. "What are you doing?" Her voice was dangerously calm. "I'm washing my clothes." She walked over to the washer, opened it. She pulled out my wet clothes and threw them on the floor. "I already had laundry scheduled for today. Now you'll have to wait." I looked at my clothes on the ground, soaking full of soap, but it's already halfway through the cycle. She cut me off. "I don't care. This is my washer, my apartment, my rules." I picked up my clothes from the floor with trembling hands. The water soaked my shoes. I went back to my room, carrying my basket, leaving a trail of drips all the way. In my room, I hung the clothes up as best I could. They dried stiff with spots of dried soap. But I didn't dare go down again. The weekends were particularly difficult. Vanessa would invite friends to the apartment. They would laugh, drink, play loud music. I would stay locked in my room, listening to it all. One afternoon, one of her friends knocked on my door by mistake. "Is there a bathroom in here?" Before I could answer, I heard Vanessa's voice. "Don't go in there. That's where we keep the old junk we don't use." Laughter. I heard laughter. I closed my eyes and clenched my fists. Old junk we don't use. That's what I was to her. An object. A nuisance. Something you store in a dark room, waiting for the moment to throw it in the trash. Daniel spoke to me less and less. When we passed in the hallway, he would look away. If I tried to start a conversation, he'd answer with monosyllables. "How was your day, son?" "Fine." "Want me to make you something?" "No." "Can we talk for a minute?" "I'm busy." It was as if he was ashamed of my existence. As if my very presence reminded him of something he preferred to forget. Maybe his conscience, maybe the fact that he had betrayed his own mother. But a conscience is something you can easily silence when you don't want to listen. And Daniel had learned to silence his very well. One Friday night, I was in my room when I heard raised voices. Vanessa and Daniel were arguing in the living room. I pressed my ear to the door. "I'm sick of having your mother here," Vanessa was saying. "It's like having a shadow following you everywhere." "I know, babe, but what do you want me to do?" Daniel replied. "Get her out of here." Send her to a nursing home, to some relative's house. I don't care. But I don't want her here. My blood ran cold. She doesn't have anyone else, Vanessa. And she doesn't have any money either. And that's my problem. She's the one who decided to give us all her money. That was her decision, not mine. There was a silence. You're right, Daniel said finally. I'll talk to her. I moved away from the door. I sat on the bed. I was shaking. So that was the plan. Get rid of me. After taking everything from me, after leaving me with nothing, now they wanted to kick me out. And my son, my only son, agreed. Daniel never came to talk to me that night. But things got worse. Vanessa stopped pretending. She stopped serving me food. If you're hungry, serve yourself. Or do I have to chew for you, too? I would wait for them to finish eating to go to the kitchen. Sometimes there was nothing left. Sometimes I'd only find scraps. I ate stale bread, overripe fruit, whatever was there. My clothes started to get too big. I was losing weight. I'd look in the mirror and not recognize myself. My eyes were sunken. My skin was grayish. I looked like a walking corpse. And maybe that's what I was, one of the living dead, dragging myself through an apartment that rejected me. One afternoon, while I was in my room, I heard my door open. Vanessa walked in without knocking. She looked around with contempt. This room is a disaster. It smells damp. It wasn't a disaster. It was clean, tidy. But I said nothing. She walked over to the shelf where I kept my books. She picked one up, flipped through it. You still read this stuff? How boring. She threw it on the floor. She picked up another, did the same. One by one, she threw all my books on the ground. I stood there, not moving a muscle. When she finished, she looked at the photograph of Robert. She picked it up. Your husband, she said with a twisted smile. You know, I wonder if he knew what a burden you were. Maybe that's why he died. To escape from you. I felt something roar inside me. A fury I didn't know I possessed. But I bit my tongue. I swallowed the rage. I let her continue. She put the photograph back. Crooked, almost falling off the shelf. I need this room, she said suddenly. I want to make it an office. So, you're going to have to find somewhere else to sleep. Somewhere else. My voice came out broken. This apartment has 3 bedrooms. You have one. This one was mine. Where do you want me to sleep? She shrugged. Not my problem. Maybe on the couch or in the kitchen or on the street. I don't care. She left the room, leaving me shaking with helplessness. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the bed staring at the wall, thinking, remembering 43 years of marriage. A son I had raised with all my love. A house I had sold. Thinking I was doing something good. And now this. Humiliation after humiliation. Pain after pain. How much longer? How much longer was I going to put up with it? I looked at the attorney Thomas's card, which I kept on my nightstand. I had taken it out several times in the past few weeks, but I had never dared to call. This time, I took it in my hands. I stared at it. Maybe it was time to do something. Maybe it was time to stop being a victim. But I still didn't know what. I still didn't know how. I only knew that something had to change because I couldn't keep living like this. This wasn't living. This was barely surviving. And I was tired of just surviving. The next day, I woke up with a decision. I was going to call the attorney, Thomas. I needed to talk to someone to understand if there was anything at all, I could do. My hands were shaking when I dialed the number on his card. It rang 3 times before he answered. Law Office of Thomas Green. This is Thomas speaking. His voice sounded warm, professional. Mr. Green, this is Margaret. I don't know if you remember me. I came to your office a few months ago, too. Mrs. Margaret, he interrupted gently. Of course, I remember you. How are you? I broke. I started to cry. I couldn't hold it in. All those months of enduring, of staying silent, of swallowing the pain, came rushing out. I'm not okay, Mr. Green. I'm not okay at all. He waited patiently for me to calm down. What's happening? I told him everything. Every humiliation, every hurtful word, every day of feeling invisible. I spoke for nearly half an hour without stopping. He listened in silence, only interrupting to ask a specific question. When I finished, there was a long silence. "Mrs. Margaret," he said finally, "I'm very sorry for what's happening, but there's something I need to tell you." My heart beat faster. "What is it?" "When you came to my office, I was obligated to process the documents as you signed them. The apartment is legally in your son's and daughter-in-law's names. However..." He paused. "However, what?" My voice was barely a whisper. "I did something I probably shouldn't have, but my conscience wouldn't let me rest after watching you sign those papers. I felt the air leave my lungs." "What did you do?" "I prepared a second set of documents, ones where the apartment was registered in your name. I signed them as a witness and kept them. They have no legal validity without your signature, of course. But I have them just in case you ever needed them." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you saying..." "I'm saying that if you come to my office, sign these documents, and we register them properly, that apartment can be legally yours. You provided the money. You have the right." The tears were streaming down my cheeks. But this time, they were different. They weren't tears of pain, but of something I had forgotten existed. Hope. "But how?" "The documents I signed. Those documents have a technical problem. I noticed it later. Your son and daughter-in-law signed as recipients of a donation, but the property transfer document was never completed correctly. There's a legal loophole. If we act quickly, we can correct it." My mind was spinning. "Why are you doing this for me?" He sighed. "Because I have a mother your age, and because I've seen too many cases like yours, good people who are taken advantage of by their own family. I can't save them all, but maybe I can help you." That same afternoon, I went to his office. I took the bus, something I hadn't done in years. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Vanessa was at work. Daniel, too. I had the apartment to myself and took the chance. Thomas greeted me with a kind smile. He offered me tea. I sat across from his desk and he took out a thick folder. "These are the documents," he said, placing them in front of me. "If you sign them, the apartment will be registered in your name. It will legally be your property." I looked at the papers. My name, Margaret Owner. The words looked strange, almost unreal. "How long does it take to make this official?" I asked. "About a week. I have contacts at the registry who can speed up the process." I picked up the pen. I held it over the paper. I thought about Daniel. About the boy he had been. About all the nights I had stayed up with him when he had a fever. About the years I had dedicated to raising him, to loving him, to giving him everything I had. What if I regret it? I asked suddenly. Thomas looked at me with sympathetic eyes. "Then you don't sign, and everything stays as it is." "But Mrs. Margaret, let me ask you something. Does your son treat you with respect?" I shook my head. "Does your daughter-in-law value you?" I shook my head again. "Are you happy in that apartment?" The tears started again. "No, I feel like I'm slowly dying." He nodded. "Then you have your answer." I signed every page, every initial, every line that required my name. When I finished, Thomas took the documents carefully. "Now, let me do my job. 1 week, I'll call you. In the meantime, don't say anything. Not a word to anyone." "Understood." I nodded. "How much do I owe you for this?" He shook his head. "Nothing. This isn't about money. This is about justice." I returned to the apartment feeling different. Light. As if a huge weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I slipped inside quietly. The house was silent. I went to my room and sat on the bed. For the first time in months, I smiled. A small, almost imperceptible smile, but a real one. I had a secret. A powerful secret. And for now, that secret was mine alone. The next few days were strange. I continued my usual routine. I shut myself in my room, ate the scraps, endured Vanessa's hurtful comments, but something had changed inside me. Every time she insulted me, I thought, "Just wait. Just you wait." Every time Daniel ignored me, I told myself, It's almost time. It was like being in a movie where I was the only one who knew the ending, and the ending was going to be glorious. Vanessa noticed something different about me, though she couldn't pinpoint what. "Why are you smiling?" she asked me one morning when she found me in the kitchen. "Am I smiling?" I replied, playing dumb. "Yes, you look weird. Are you okay in the head?" I shrugged. "I'm just in a good mood." She narrowed her eyes suspiciously. "Well, I don't know why. You have nothing to be happy about." She left the kitchen, leaving me alone. I kept smiling. Why? Because she didn't know. Because nobody knew. And that was my power. My silence was no longer submission. It was strategy. A week later, my phone rang. It was Thomas. "Mrs. Margaret, I have good news. The documents are registered. The apartment is officially yours. You can come by the office to pick up the deeds whenever you like." I closed my eyes. I had done it. After so much suffering, after enduring so much, I finally had something that was mine. Something no one could take away from me. But I didn't go to pick up the documents right away. I waited. I watched. I studied my enemies like a general studies the battlefield before attacking. Vanessa was becoming more and more cruel. It was as if she sensed she was losing control over me, and it infuriated her. "Why don't you cry anymore?" she asked me one afternoon. "You used to cry all the time. What changed?" I looked her directly in the eye. "Maybe I just got tired of crying." She laughed with contempt. "Well, you should start again because Daniel and I have decided something. You're getting out of here in 2 weeks. We already found a nursing home that can take you. It costs $3,000 a month. You'll have to figure out how to pay for it with your Social Security." My Social Security check was $3,500. If I paid for the home, I'd be left with $500 for food, medicine, everything else. It would be a return to absolute poverty. But I didn't flinch. "I understand," I said simply. She seemed disappointed by my lack of reaction. "That's all you're going to say? What do you want me to say?" "I don't know. I thought you'd beg, cry, make a scene." I shook my head. "No. If that's what you've decided, I accept it." Vanessa looked at me with a mix of confusion and frustration. She wanted to see me broken. She wanted to see me destroyed. But I remained calm, serene. That night, alone in my room, I took out Thomas's card. It was time. Tomorrow would be the day. Tomorrow, this nightmare would end. But it wouldn't end with pleas or tears. It would end with the truth, with legal documents, with the justice I had been waiting months for. I laid down in my bed and slept deeply for the first time in a long time. I dreamed of my backyard, of the smell of damp earth, of the evening sun painting everything orange. I dreamed of freedom. And when I woke up, I knew that dream was about to come true. My whole life, I had been invisible. My whole life, I had been the one to stay quiet, to endure, to accept. But even the quietest woman has a limit. And I had just reached mine. Vanessa and Daniel had played with me as if I were a doll with no will of its own. They had taken my money, my dignity, my peace. But they made one mistake, one fatal error. They underestimated the old woman. They thought I was weak. They thought I was stupid. They thought they could crush me without consequences. They were about to find out just how wrong they were. And I was ready. More than ready. I was anxious because after months of being the victim, it was finally my turn. My turn to speak. My turn to act. My turn to show them who really held the power. And I wasn't going to waste this opportunity. Not after everything I had suffered. Tomorrow would be Judgment Day and I would be the judge. The day came faster than I expected. Vanessa had organized a dinner party at the apartment. She had invited some of her friends from work. She wanted to show off her perfect home, her perfect life. I, of course, was not invited to sit with them. I was supposed to stay in my room, invisible as always. But tonight was going to be different. Tonight, everything would change. I prepared my clothes carefully. I put on a dark green dress that was from my better days. I brushed my hair and pinned it up with dignity. I looked in the mirror and for the first time in months, I saw more than just a broken woman. I saw strength. I saw determination. I saw someone who was ready to fight. I left my room when I heard the voices in the dining room. Vanessa was laughing loudly. Her friends joined in. Daniel was serving wine. The smell of expensive food filled the apartment. Food they had surely ordered from some fancy restaurant. Food I never got to taste. I stood in the doorway of the dining room. No one saw me at first. They kept talking, laughing, enjoying themselves. Then I took a step forward and another until I was standing at the table. Vanessa was the first to notice me. Her laughter froze. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was low, threatening. "I live here," I replied calmly. "Go to your room. We have guests." I shook my head. "No, not this time." Her friends were looking at me with curiosity. Daniel stood up. "Mom, please don't make a scene." "A scene?" I repeated. "Like the ones you've made me live through all these months." The silence became heavy, uncomfortable. Vanessa gripped her wine glass so tightly I thought it would break. "Daniel, get your mother out of here." He approached me. "Mom, come on. We'll talk later." I looked him in the eyes. Those eyes that had once looked at me with love. Now there was only irritation, annoyance, as if I were a problem to be solved. "No," I said firmly. "I'm not leaving. In fact, I'm going to sit down." And I did. I pulled out a chair and sat at the table. Vanessa shot up so fast her chair nearly fell over. "What do you think you're doing sitting at the table without permission?" Her shout echoed through the apartment. Her friends stared at the scene with wide eyes. One of them muttered something about leaving. But Vanessa wasn't paying attention to them. She was completely focused on me. She took my plate, the empty one in front of me, and threw it to the floor. The sound of the breaking plate was deafening. The pieces scattered across the floor. I didn't move. I sat there staring at her. "Nice one, babe," shouted Daniel, clapping. "The old woman needs to learn her place." His words pierced me like knives, but they didn't disarm me. On the contrary, they gave me the final strength I needed. I stood up slowly. Vanessa was looking at me with a triumphant smile. She thought she had won. She thought she had broken me again. How wrong she was. I took a deep breath and then in a voice I didn't recognize as my own, a firm, powerful voice that came from the depths of my being, I shouted, "Now get out of my apartment." The silence that followed was absolute. No one moved. No one breathed. Vanessa blinked, confused. "What did you say?" I said, I repeated more slowly, savoring every word. "Get out of my apartment." Daniel laughed nervously. "Mom, I think your age is getting to you. This isn't your apartment." I pulled the documents I had picked up from the attorney's office that afternoon from my pocket. I unfolded them calmly and placed them on the table. "Are you sure about that?" Vanessa grabbed the papers. She read them. Her face went from furious red to deathly white in a matter of seconds. This can't be real." "Oh, it's very real," I said. "This apartment is registered in my name. It always was. Well, for the last week officially, but the money that paid for it was mine. And now I have the documents to prove it." Daniel snatched the papers from Vanessa's hands. He read them once, twice, 3 times. "But you signed, we signed. This doesn't make sense." "It makes perfect sense," I replied. "It turns out the documents you signed had irregularities. The attorney was very kind in helping me correct them. And now legally, this place is mine. Only mine." Vanessa's friends stood up uncomfortably. "I think we should go," one of them said. "Yes, we'd better get going," added another. They left quickly, whispering among themselves. They left Vanessa and Daniel alone with me. The power had shifted, and we all knew it. Vanessa lunged at me. "This is a trick. It's illegal. We're going to sue you." I stood firm. "Sue me if you want. I have all the documents in order. A lawyer already reviewed them. You don't have a case." Daniel sank into a chair. He looked like he had just seen a ghost. "Mom, why? Why would you do this?" I looked at him with a mixture of pain and disappointment. "Why? You ask me why." My voice was trembling now, not from fear, but from emotion held back for too long. Because you treated me like garbage. Because you humiliated me every single day. Because you took my dignity, my peace, my reason for living. Because I stopped being your mother and became your slave. And you know what the worst part is, Daniel? You did it with a smile. You had fun watching me suffer. He opened his mouth to respond, but found no words. Vanessa, on the other hand, didn't stay quiet. You can't kick us out. Where will we go? Not my problem, I replied, using the exact same word she had said to me. Maybe to a hotel or with your family or on the street. I don't care. Vanessa looked at me with pure hatred. You're a witch, a bitter, vengeful old woman. Maybe, I nodded. But I'm an old woman with an apartment in her name. And you are two moochers with no roof over your heads, so if anyone here should be worried, it's not me. Daniel stood up. He walked toward me. For a moment, I thought he was going to hit me. I stepped back instinctively. Daniel, I warned. Don't come any closer, but he kept advancing. You can't do this. We're your family. Family. My voice broke. Did you call me family while you made me eat scraps? Did you consider me family when you forced me to sleep in a windowless room? Was I your family when you clapped while your wife humiliated me? He didn't answer because he had no answer because he knew I was right. Vanessa started pacing like a caged animal. There has to be something we can do, some way to reverse this. There isn't, I said firmly. I've already spoken with my lawyer. The documents are legal and irreversible. This apartment is mine. Period. Suddenly, she stopped. A strange smile appeared on her face. A smile that gave me a bad feeling. You're old, she said slowly. Weak. Sick. How long do you think you're going to last? When you die, this apartment will go to Daniel. He's your only heir. Her words chilled my blood. Not because I was afraid of dying, but because I realized just how far she was willing to go. I realized that if I stayed alone in that apartment with them, my life was in danger. That's precisely why I responded. I've already spoken with my lawyer about changing my will. If anything happens to me, this apartment will go to a charitable foundation. Daniel won't receive a single cent. Daniel's face fell. You do that. You disinherit me. I already did. I lied. Though in reality, it was my next step. I signed the papers this morning. He fell to his knees. Literally fell to his knees in front of me. Mom, please forgive me. I didn't know what I was doing. Vanessa was pressuring me, manipulating me. I love you, Mom. I've always loved you. I looked at my son kneeling on the floor, and I felt nothing. Not pity, not love, not even hate, just a vast emptiness where motherly affection had once existed. It's too late, Daniel. Far too late. Vanessa yanked him by the arm. Get up. Don't humiliate yourself in front of this woman. But he didn't move. He was crying. Real tears were streaming down his cheeks. Please, Mom. Give me a chance. I'll be better. I promise. You had months of chances. I told him. Every day you watched me suffer was a chance to be better. And you didn't take it. Not once. I turned to leave. Then I heard a scream. Vanessa had lunged at me. I felt her hands on my shoulders, shoving me. I lost my balance. I fell to the floor hard. Pain exploded in my hip. Daniel screamed. Vanessa screamed. I tried to get up, but I couldn't. The pain was too intense. What did you do? Daniel yelled at Vanessa. You pushed her. She's hurt. Vanessa backed away, hands over her mouth, realizing what she'd done. I didn't. She provoked me. I didn't mean to. Daniel tried to help me up, but I pushed him away. Don't touch me. I managed to get to my feet, leaning on the wall. Every movement was agony. It's over, I said through gritted teeth. I'm calling the police now. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands. The pain in my hip was unbearable, but adrenaline kept me standing. I dialed 911. Vanessa lunged at me, trying to snatch the phone. Don't you dare, she screamed, but Daniel stopped her. That's enough, Vanessa. Look what you did. The operator answered. 911. What's your emergency? My voice came out choked, pained. I've been attacked in my home. I need help. And an ambulance. I think I broke something. I gave the address. The operator told me help was on the way, that I shouldn't hang up, that I should stay on the line. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor. I couldn't stand any longer. The pain was spreading through my whole leg. Vanessa was pacing like a caged tiger. This is your fault. It's all your fault, you old demon. If you hadn't pulled that dirty trick with the papers, none of this would have happened. My fault. I looked up at her from the floor. My fault for taking back what was mine. My fault for stopping slavery. She crouched in front of me, her face inches from mine. It's your fault for being a fool who didn't know when to keep her mouth shut. You could have lived here quietly, but no, you had to pull your little stunt. And now look at you. She pointed to my leg. This is just the beginning of what you deserve. A chill ran down my spine. This woman was dangerous. Truly dangerous. Daniel was sitting on the sofa with his head in his hands. They're going to arrest you, Vanessa. You pushed her. There's evidence. She laughed. A hysterical, humorless laugh. Evidence. What evidence? She fell on her own. She was weak, old. She tripped. Right, Daniel. She looked at him with threatening eyes. Tell them she fell on her own. He lifted his head. For the first time in months, I saw something in his eyes that wasn't cowardice. It was fear. But it was something else, too. Maybe a conscience. Maybe regret. I'm not going to lie, he said in a trembling voice. I've lied enough. I've hurt my mother enough. I can't keep doing this. Vanessa stared at him in disbelief. What are you saying? I'm saying, he stood up facing her. That you pushed her. I saw it. And if the police ask, I'm going to tell the truth. She backed away as if she'd been slapped. You're going to betray me after everything we've built together. Daniel shook his head. We didn't build anything, Vanessa. We destroyed. We destroyed my mother. We destroyed any decency I had left. And I can't do it anymore. The sirens grew closer. Vanessa panicked. She ran for the door. I'm not staying here for this. But Daniel blocked her. You're not going anywhere. You're going to face what you did. She tried to push him, but he was stronger. He grabbed her arms. Let me go. You're hurting me like you hurt my mother for months, he replied. His words sounded tired, defeated, as if he were finally waking up from a nightmare. The siren stopped in front of the building. I heard hurried footsteps on the stairs. Knocks on the door. Please, open up. Daniel let go of Vanessa and went to open it. 2 officers, a man and a woman, entered, followed by 2 paramedics. The female officer saw me on the floor and knelt beside me. Are you the one who called? I nodded. She pushed me. I pointed at Vanessa. She attacked me in my own home. The male officer approached Vanessa. Is this true, She shook her head frantically. No, no, no. She fell. She's old. She tripped. I didn't do anything. The officer looked at Daniel. What did you see, sir? Daniel closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. And when he opened them, I finally saw my son. The man he should have been all along. My wife pushed her. I saw it. My mother didn't trip. Vanessa attacked her because she's furious that this apartment legally belongs to my mother. The officer nodded. Understood. No, this is ridiculous. Daniel, tell them the truth. Tell them you're lying. Tell them I didn't do anything. But Daniel just shook his head. The paramedics were checking me carefully. We need to take you to the hospital. It looks like you have a hip fracture. The pain confirmed their words. Every breath was agony. They put me on a stretcher. As they carried me out of the apartment, I saw the officer handcuffing Vanessa. She was screaming, fighting, swearing. This is your fault, you old witch. When I get out, you're going to regret this. I swear you'll regret it. The female officer silenced her. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. They carried me down the stairs carefully. Neighbors were coming out of their apartments, watching the spectacle. Some whispered, Others just stared with morbid curiosity. In the ambulance, one of the paramedics, a young man with kind eyes, took my hand. "It's okay, You're safe now. It's all over." But I knew it wasn't over. This was just the beginning. We arrived at the hospital. They took me straight to X-ray. The fracture was severe. I needed surgery immediately. They prepped me quickly. An older doctor with glasses and a pristine white coat explained the procedure. "We're going to put a pin in your hip. It's a common surgery for people your age. Recovery will take several months." I nodded. Will I be able to walk with physical therapy?" "Yes. But you're going to need help for a while." They gave me the anesthesia. Before I lost consciousness, I thought about everything that had happened. About how an invisible, silent, broken woman had found the strength to defend herself. About how silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's just preparation. Sometimes it's the calm before the storm, and my storm had arrived with all its fury. I woke up hours later in a hospital room. The light was bright. Painful. I tried to move, but the pain stopped me. A nurse came in. "Easy, The surgery went well. Just rest." Someone was sitting next to my bed. It took me a few seconds to focus. It was Daniel. His eyes were red, swollen from crying. When he saw I was awake, he came closer. "Mom." His voice was a broken whisper. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I didn't answer. I just looked at him. "I know I can't be forgiven," he continued. "I know what I did to you was unforgivable, but I need you to know that when I saw you on the floor, when I saw what Vanessa did to you, something broke in me." "Where is she?" I asked, my voice. "In custody. They charged her with assault. She's spending the night in jail. She has a hearing tomorrow." I closed my eyes. Justice. Finally. Justice. "I'm going to divorce her," Daniel said suddenly. "I should have done it a long time ago. I should have defended you from day one. But I was a coward. I let her hurt you because it was easier than confronting her. And I'm going to carry that guilt for the rest of my life." I opened my eyes. "And now what? You expect me to forgive you? That we forget everything and go back to being mother and son as if nothing happened?" He shook his head. "No, I don't expect anything. I just came because I needed you to know I was sorry and because I wanted to make sure you were okay." He stood up. "I'll go. I won't bother you anymore. The apartment is yours. I'll find somewhere to stay. And about the will," he paused. "Leave me out of it. I don't deserve anything. Absolutely nothing." He walked to the door. Something inside me moved. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe never. But it was something. A small crack in the wall of ice built around my heart. "Daniel." He stopped, turned around. "It was your choice to testify against her. Your choice to tell the truth. That counts for something." His eyes filled with tears again. "It's not enough." "No," I admitted. "It's not enough. But it's a start," he nodded. He left the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The silence of the hospital was different from the silence of the apartment. This was a clean silence. No hostility, no threats. It was the silence of a new beginning. I stayed in the hospital for 3 days. In that time, Daniel came every day. He never stayed long. He'd just come in, ask how I was, and leave. He didn't try to justify himself. He didn't ask for forgiveness again. He was just there, present in a way he hadn't been in years. On the 3rd day, the hospital's social worker came to see me. "Mrs. Margaret, we need to talk about your situation when you leave the hospital. You're going to need special care during your recovery. Do you have family who can help you?" I thought of Daniel. I thought of how easy it would be to say yes, that he could take care of me, but I didn't want that. "Not yet. I have money saved," I said. "I can hire someone." She nodded. "We can help you coordinate home nursing services and physical therapy." That night, alone in my hospital bed, I thought about everything that was to come. The recovery would be long and painful, but I would be in my apartment, in my space, with no one to humiliate me. With no one to make me feel invisible. For the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. It wasn't complete happiness. The physical and emotional pain were still there. But it was peace. The peace of knowing I had fought back, that I hadn't given up, that I had reclaimed my dignity, even if it had cost me a broken hip and a lost son. And as I looked out the hospital window at the city lights, I knew it was worth it. Every second of pain, every tear shed, every sleepless night, it was all worth it for this moment, for this freedom, for this silence that was finally mine. The day I left the hospital, Daniel was waiting for me at the entrance. He had hired a special transport service for people with reduced mobility. They helped me into the van carefully. Every movement was still painful, but it was no longer the agony of the first few days. Daniel sat next to me in silence. We didn't talk for the entire ride. We just looked out the windows, each lost in our own thoughts. When we arrived at the building, I saw he had prepared everything for my arrival. He had installed grab bars in the bathroom. He had moved some furniture to create more space. He had bought a special shower chair. I hired a nurse, he told me, as he helped me inside. She comes 3 times a week and a physical therapist. 2. It's all paid for the next 3 months. I looked at him surprised. With what money? He looked down. I sold my car and some other things. It's the least I can do. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to refuse his help to maintain my pride, my distance. But the practical part knew I needed it. At least for now. Thank you, I finally murmured. He nodded. He helped me to my room, but when I opened the door, I stopped short. It wasn't the same room. The walls had been painted a soft peach color. They had installed a new window that looked outside, not at the ventilation shaft. The bed was new, more comfortable. There were light curtains, a nice lamp, a soft rug. What is this? Daniel cleared his throat. While you were in the hospital, I hired people to remodel. I thought you deserved a better space. The tears came without warning. Not from pain, but from something more complicated. A mixture of gratitude and sadness, of appreciation and resentment. You didn't have to do this. Yes, I did, he replied. I'd have to do 1,000 more things, and it still wouldn't be enough to make up for all the damage. I sat on the new bed. It was soft, cozy, nothing like the old, sagging mattress I'd had before. And Vanessa? I asked, Daniel tensed. She's still in custody. The hearing was yesterday. The judge issued a restraining order. She can't come near you or this building, and there are formal assault charges. Her lawyer is trying to negotiate, but with my testimony, he paused. It's going to be hard for her to get off easy. I nodded slowly. Part of me felt satisfaction, justice. But another part, a part one hated to admit, felt something like pity. Not for Vanessa, but for how things had gotten to this point. For how hate had grown until it consumed everything. And you? I asked. Where are you staying? In a hotel for now. I'm looking for an apartment. Something small, cheap. I can't afford luxuries anymore. He laughed bitterly. Turns out when your wife is in jail and you just testified against her, life gets pretty complicated. We sat in silence, a heavy silence loaded with years of mistakes and unsaid words. Daniel, I said finally. What you did, what you both did to me, I can't just forget it. It doesn't work like that. He nodded. I know, but I continued. The fact that you told the truth, that you finally took my side, even if it was late, that means something. I don't know what yet, but it means something. He sat on the edge of the bed. I don't expect you to forgive me, Mom. I just hope that one day you can let me try to be your son again. Not now, not soon, but someday. I didn't promise anything because I didn't know if I could keep it. The damage was deep. The wounds were still bleeding. But I didn't say no either. I just left the possibility floating in the air between us like a small open window in a dark room. Daniel left shortly after. He left me alone in my new room. I lay back on the bed and looked at the ceiling. For the first time in months, I felt at peace in that apartment. I was no longer an invader. I was no longer a burden. I was the owner, the sole owner. And no one could take that away from me. The following days were about adjustment. The nurse, a woman named Rosa, came in the mornings. She was efficient but kind. She helped me with the basic things I couldn't do alone yet. She'd helped me shower, change my bandages, prepare nutritious food. She didn't talk too much, which I appreciated. She just did her job with professionalism and an occasional smile. The physical therapist was a young man named Marcus. He had an infectious energy that annoyed me at first, but that I slowly grew to appreciate. "Mrs. Margaret, today we're going to walk 5 more steps than yesterday," he'd say with exaggerated enthusiasm. "I can't," I'd complain. "It hurts too much." "Pain is temporary," he'd reply. "But the satisfaction of achieving something difficult lasts forever." And he was right. Every small bit of progress, every step I managed to take without help was a victory. Proof that I was recovering, not just physically, but emotionally, too. Daniel kept coming, never without warning. He always called first. "Can I stop by to see how you are?" Sometimes I'd say yes, sometimes no, and he respected both answers. He never pushed, never demanded. He just offered his presence when I allowed it. One afternoon, 3 weeks after leaving the hospital, I felt well enough to walk through the apartment without help. Rosa had finished her shift. Marcus was coming the next day. I was alone. I walked slowly through each room. For the first time, I really saw them without fear, without anxiety. The living room with its large windows letting in the afternoon sunday. The spacious kitchen with its modern appliances. The dining room where so many humiliations had occurred. Now it was all mine. I could sit where I wanted, eat when I wanted, watch television at any hour, open the windows, invite friends over if I wanted to. Although I didn't have any friends. I had lost them all over the years. But maybe I thought I could make new friends. Maybe I could start over. Not just with the apartment, but with my entire life. I sat in the dining room in the same chair where Vanessa had screamed at me, where my plate had flown through the air. I put my hands on the table. The wood was cold, smooth, and suddenly, without planning to, I began to cry. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of release, of relief, of having survived something that had almost destroyed me. I cried for the woman I had been. For the Margaret who had spent decades being invisible, being small, being less than. And I cried for the woman I was now. Stronger, firmer, more aware of her own worth. The sobs shook me for minutes. When they finally stopped, I felt empty but clean. Like after a storm, when the air smells fresh and new, I dried my tears. I stood up carefully. I went to the kitchen and made tea. My tea, the way I liked it. I sat back down in the dining room and drank slowly, savoring every sip. The phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. "Mrs. Margaret," it was a woman's voice. Formal. "This is Linda Foster, the prosecutor for the case against Vanessa Sandoval. I need to inform you that she has accepted a plea agreement. She will plead guilty to assault. She will receive 2 years of probation, 300 hours of community service, and she must pay your medical expenses. The restraining order will remain in effect for 5 years." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "I understand. I also want you to know," Linda Foster continued, "that your testimony and your son's were crucial. Many victims do not have that courage. You did the right thing." I hung up the phone and stared at it. Probation. Community service. It wasn't jail, but it was consequences. It was an acknowledgement that what she had done was wrong. And maybe that was enough. Maybe I didn't need total revenge. I just needed the truth to be recognized. That what they had done to me was not okay. That I didn't deserve that treatment. That I mattered. That night, I called Daniel. The prosecutor called me. I told him, "It's done." "She called me too," he replied. How do you feel?" There was a long pause. Relieved, sad, ashamed all at once. "Did you start the divorce proceedings?" "Yes," she signed without a fight. "I think she just wants to be done with all this and move on." We were silent. "Daniel," I said finally, "I want you to know something. I don't know if I can ever fully forgive you. I don't know if we'll ever be what we were. But I'm willing to try to build something new. Not like before, something different with boundaries, with respect. I heard his shaky breath. Really? Really? But it's going to take time. And you're going to have to earn it every single day. I will. He promised. Every day for the rest of my life if I have to. We hung up. And for the first time since this all began, I smiled. A genuine smile because there was something like hope growing in my chest. Not the naive hope from before. Not the hope that had led me to give everything away without protecting myself, but a wiser, more cautious hope, but a real one. 6 months passed since that night when everything changed. 6 months of physical therapy, of learning to walk again, of reclaiming not just my mobility but also my life. The hip healed slowly, but it healed. I no longer needed Rosa every day. She only came once a week for routine checkups. Marcus still came, though now more as a friend than a therapist. He had taught me not only how to walk, but how to stay strong, how to not give up when the pain surfaced. Pain always comes, Mrs. Margaret. He had told me once, the important thing is how we respond to it. Whether we stay in bed or whether we get up and keep moving forward. Daniel kept his promise. He came twice a week, always calling first. He never stayed for more than an hour. At first, the conversations were awkward, forced. We'd talk about the weather, about shallow news, about anything other than the past. But over time, the words began to flow more naturally. He'd tell me about his job, about the small apartment he'd rented, about how he was learning to cook because he no longer had anyone to do it for him. I'd tell him about my therapy sessions, about the books I was reading, about the small container garden I'd started on the balcony. Tomatoes, herbs, just like at my old house. The smell of damp earth reconnected me with who I had been before I lost my way. One spring afternoon, Daniel arrived with a box. I brought something, he said nervously. He opened it. Inside were old photographs. Photos of him as a child. Photos of me when I was young. Photos of Robert. Photos from birthdays, Christmases, vacations I had forgotten existed. I found them stored in the basement of my building, he explained. They were in a box I'd rescued from your house before we sold it. I thought maybe you'd want to have them. I picked up a photograph. It was of Daniel at 5 years old, smiling with that gap between his baby teeth. I was behind him, hugging him. Both of us happy, both of us whole. We were different then, I murmured. Yes, he agreed. I was different. You were too. Time changed us. But maybe, he paused, searching for the right words. Maybe we can find some of that again. Not the same, but something. We spent that afternoon looking at photographs, laughing at some memories, crying at others. It was cathartic. It was necessary. It was the beginning of something I didn't know what to call, but that felt warm in my chest. It wasn't complete forgiveness. There were still moments when I remembered the humiliations and felt anger. There were still nights when I woke up from nightmares where Vanessa was screaming and Daniel was clapping, but those moments were less and less frequent. And when they came, they no longer consumed me as they had before. I had learned to live with the pain without letting it define me. A week later, I dared to leave the apartment alone for the first time. I walked slowly through the neighborhood. I greeted some neighbors I had never properly met. An older woman named Beatrice invited me for coffee at her apartment. We talked for hours. She told me about her life, about her children who lived far away, about her husband who had died 10 years ago. Loneliness is strange, she told me as she poured more coffee. Sometimes it's the worst thing in the world. Other times, it's a gift. It all depends on whether you're alone because you want to be or because you have no other choice. Her words resonated with me. I had been alone for years, even when surrounded by people. Because loneliness isn't a lack of company, it's a lack of connection. Now living physically alone in my apartment, I felt less alone than ever because I was finally connected to myself. I had finally found myself. Beatrice and I became friends. We started seeing each other regularly. She introduced me to other neighbors. We formed a small group. We played cards on Thursdays, shared food on Sundays. They were women like me, women who had lived, who had suffered, who had survived. And in their stories, I found pieces of my own. In their strength, I found inspiration to keep building my own. One day, Daniel arrived with news. I was offered a job in another city, he said. It pays better. It's a good opportunity. My heart tightened. We had just started to rebuild something and now he was leaving. He must have seen my expression because he quickly added, I'm not going to take it. Not yet. Not when we're just. Don't, I interrupted. You have to take it. He looked at me confused. But I thought, you thought right. I said, we are rebuilding our relationship, and we will continue to do so. But you can't stay here for me. You can't pass up opportunities because of guilt. That's not love, son. That's sacrifice based on remorse. And I don't want that. He looked at me with damp eyes. Then what do you want? I want you to live your life, I replied firmly. I want you to be happy. I want you to grow. And I want that when we talk, it's because we both want to, not because you feel you owe me something. I owe you everything, Mom. No. I shook my head. You don't owe me anything anymore. What you did by telling the truth, by testifying, by helping me these months, you paid your debt. Now we are two adults trying to have a healthy relationship. And healthy relationships need space. They need individual growth. So take that job. Live your life and call me when you can. I'll come visit when I'm stronger or you'll come here, but don't stay out of obligation, he cried. And so did I. But they were clean tears. Tears of release. 2 weeks later, Daniel moved. He helped me find someone who could assist me if I needed anything in an emergency. He left me all his contact numbers. He hugged me at the door of my apartment. I love you, Mom, he said. I've always loved you. Even when I didn't show it, even when I acted like a monster. I know, I replied. And it was true. I knew love isn't always enough. Sometimes love exists even in the midst of the damage. But now it was a more mature, more conscious, more real love. After he left, I sat in my living room. My living room. I looked around the apartment that had almost cost me my life to reclaim. And I felt gratitude. Not for the apartment itself, but for what it represented. My ability to fight. My refusal to disappear. My decision to matter. I thought about the Margaret from a year ago. The woman who had sold her house without a second thought. The woman who had signed papers, giving up everything. The woman who had accepted being invisible because she thought it was her destiny. That woman had died on the floor of this dining room when her plate shattered on the floor. And in her place, this new Margaret had been born. Stronger, wiser, more whole. She wasn't perfect. She was still afraid sometimes. She still cried some nights. She still had days when the weight of all she had lived through threatened to crush her. But she no longer gave up. She no longer stayed quiet. She no longer made herself small to fit into the spaces others assigned her. One afternoon, 3 months after Daniel moved, I received a letter. It was from Vanessa. I held it in my hands for several minutes before opening it. Part of me wanted to throw it away unread, but another part, the part that had learned to face difficult things, opened it. The letter was short. Margaret, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to read this, but I needed to write it. What I did to you was unforgivable. I was cruel, abusive, monstrous. I have no excuses, only explanations that don't mean anything. The therapy I was forced to take as part of my sentence has made me see things about myself I preferred to ignore. I am a broken person who broke another person, and that will haunt me for the rest of my life. I'm not asking for your forgiveness because I don't deserve it. I just want you to know that I am sorry for every hurtful word, every humiliation, every moment of pain I caused you. And I hope you have found peace, because if anyone in this world deserves peace, it's you, Vanessa. I folded the letter slowly. I put it in a drawer. I don't know if I'll ever forgive her. I don't know if it matters, because forgiveness isn't something she needs from me. It's something I need to give myself. Forgive myself for having been so naive, for having trusted so blindly, for having wasted so much time being invisible, and that forgiveness was coming. Little by little, day by day, I got up and walked to the balcony. My tomato plants were flowering, small yellow blossoms that would soon become fruit. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of damp earth and new possibilities. And I thought about everything I had learned. That silence isn't always weakness. That staying quiet can be a strategy. That waiting for the right moment isn't cowardice but wisdom. That even shadows have their limits. And that when you reach that limit, when you finally get tired of disappearing, you can roar. My whole life I was a shadow. But even shadows have their moment to shine in the Sunday. And this was mine. Not because I had destroyed my enemies, but because I had saved myself. Not because I got perfect revenge, but because I had reclaimed my dignity. Not because everything was okay, but because finally, after all these years, I was okay with myself. I looked out at the city from my balcony, in my apartment, in my life, and I smiled. A calm, deep, true smile because I had learned the most important lesson. Sometimes staying quiet isn't weakness. It's just waiting for the right moment to speak. And when you do speak, when you finally use your voice after years of silence, the whole world stops to listen. And I had spoken. I had roared. And I would keep doing it. Every day I had left because I would never be invisible again. I would never be a shadow again. I was Margaret. And finally, after 67 years, I knew exactly who that woman was. And that woman was enough. More than enough. She was whole.